tomorrow night on Tipping Point, which is one of the Georgia Wrestling Histories podcasts that is hosted by myself and Larry Goodman. We're going to have David Gardner on as a guest, and he's the promoter of AWN in Fort Valley. And this is all through Larry, but Larry doesn't lie. So David Gardner is threatening to withhold results and news from his wrestling organization unless Georgia Wrestling History doesn't post results or news or anything else about any wrestling group where the promoter does not have a promoter's license. We're talking about this tomorrow night. I think it'll be a great listen. I'll put the link where you can listen to the show. It happens at 7 p.m. Tuesday night, Eastern Standard Time. But I want people to feel comfortable coming onto the show. I think the show has improved vastly over the last 3 years. I'm very proud of it, and I know Larry is as well. And instead of being a place where people are afraid to come on because they think it's going to be some kind of gotcha thing, I don't interview that way. Larry doesn't interview that way, certainly. But I just want to put my opinion based on just what I know and what I've heard out there. And I'll just say this bluntly. To threaten Georgian wrestling history with "we won't post our results" or "we won't post your news," let me get this through your fucking head, promoters and bookers and other people. Georgia Wrestling History does you a favor. You don't do them a favor. And I hate to say it like that, but it's the absolute truth. So David Gardner's position, and again, I don't think he thought this through. I think he's one of these people that thinks, we're legit, and I'm legit because I paid my $100 to the Georgia Wrestling Commission. Let me tell you about the Georgia Wrestling Commission. They don't give a shit about the wrestling part of it. They give a shit about the combat sport part of it. Wrestling, as long as they keep their heads down and shut their mouth, they're happy. That $100 goes to doing a background check, supposedly. And that's it. They have a number of things, because I've sat down with the old Georgia Wrestling Commissioner, who's now no longer there, but I've sat down and I've talked to him, and I've talked to those people at length, and I did a lot of research myself. I used to hold a promoter's license myself in the state of Georgia, and they don't give a shit about wrestling, okay? They say, don't get color. Every group does, right? They say a bunch of other stuff. And once in a while, dumb wrestling people in Georgia think, we need to have a commission. Really? Does it help anything? No. I like it the way it is. Now, do I think the promoter's license is a hard thing to get? No. Should everybody get one? Yes. However, is it Georgia Wrestling History's responsibility to find out who has a license and who doesn't and then act accordingly? No, that's horseshit, first of all. Two, I think David Gardner's going under the erroneous pretense that having put in your $100 and get your little blue promoter's license means something. It means absolutely nothing except you passed a background test. Now, if what David Gardner's trying to do on the back end is say that there are prominent people in Georgia who probably wouldn't pass a background test, so that's his way of trying to undercut them, I think that's shady. And I think perhaps... Or I think David Gardner hasn't thought about that fact. Here's the thing about Georgia wrestling. In many ways, it's better than it's ever been, right? Southern Fried is drawing huge crowds for even shows that for them are not quote-unquote big shows. Yeah, last year was Southern Fried's year. But whether that promoter paid $100 to get a background check or not has nothing to do with the quality of the programming, has nothing to do with the ethics of their business practice or anything else. It means less than nothing. Now, I understand, AWN, and let's be real about AWN. The perception of it has always been that it has been the weak sister to other groups in the area, whether that was Rampage back in the day or just about anybody else now. Does that mean quality people don't work for them? No, quality people do work for them. And clearly they are aspiring to do more and trying to do more, and kudos to them. But to try to leverage Larry Goodman and Georgia wrestling history into doing research on who all of the groups are and then excluding the groups where the promoter doesn't have a license and all. Larry already looked into it because that's what Larry does. Larry's legit, right? Larry looked into it, and there were about 30 some odd, I think 31 people, he said, who have promoters' licenses. And many of them, if not most of them, were guys that don't even run shows, who just wanted the right to say, look, I've got a promoter's license. Or they're guys who are having the promoter's license to cover for somebody that probably can't get one because they can't pass a background check. Does that suddenly make them fucking legitimate? Of course it doesn't. If you want to withhold information from Georgia wrestling history or not allow us to put your upcoming shows or match results afterwards, not have Larry come and review your show, or Rob or Scott Hensley or whatever, all I can say is you're an idiot. AWN is small fucking potatoes, and that's not a slight as much as it is a statement of fact. And I understand wanting to be bigger, but if you're going to go under this ridiculous pretense that we're somehow more legit because you put in $100 and got a little blue piece of paper, that means perhaps they did a background check. More accurately, they didn't, and they pocketed the money. Or they did do the background check for $55 and they kept the $45. Whoopity-doo. They don't care about you. They're worried about boxing. They're worried about combat sports. Wrestling is something on the back burner. And whenever somebody brings up something in regards to a Georgia promoter's license, it has never been good news. When they were looking to possibly have bigger regulations on Georgia professional wrestling, and Bill Behrens will remember this. Any number of people will remember this. It was a nightmare, and we all fought against it. And it was one of the few times that everyone always talks about, we want to unify Georgia wrestling, but it never really happens. But it kind of happened on that day. But Frank Aldridge, who's the guy who used to own WWA4 and who's a bona fide fucking moron, even though nobody wants to say it, he is. He got up and gave this ridiculous speech that almost single-handedly ruined Georgia wrestling under the pretense of, I wanted to seem like I was doing a good thing, but he almost screwed everything up. And David Gardner, whether you realize it or not, that's what you're doing. Because by giving legitimacy and power to this promoter's license that, let's face it, means nothing, right? You're giving it legitimacy and you're calling attention, and there's groups that don't have it, and, ratting here and there and the other. It does nothing but hurt everybody. Now, if you want to call for, let's get promoters' licenses on everybody that's supposed to have them, I'm all for it. But to try to leverage Georgia wrestling history, a group that only exists to help, to promote, and give legitimacy to what you're fucking doing. I've said it a million times, and I've meant it every time. If Larry Goodman has not come to your show or does not come to your shows once in a while and review them, your show ain't shit. It's the truth. It is not pro wrestling groups that give Georgia wrestling history and Larry Goodman legitimacy. It is the other way around. And I don't like anybody who disrespects Larry. I don't like anybody who disrespects Georgia wrestling history. David Gardner's calling in tomorrow night, and I'm going to talk to him, and I'm putting all this up front and having Larry promote this video so everybody can get a chance to watch it, just like they did the Priscilla Kelly tampon spot video, right? I'm putting this out there so David Gardner knows what he's walking into and knows what my opinion is. Change my mind, as the famous meme says. But I'm not so sure you can do it because I'm not so sure you've thought this out as much as I have.